We are now moving on to the Jill Stein interview. So believe it or not, CNN did interview Jill Stein. So this goes back to what I said before about people making the assumption that the third party and independent candidates this time around would be ignored like they usually are by mainstream media. This time around, that is not the case. That is not the case because someone like Jill Stein, this is not her first time running for president. When she ran for president in 2012 and 2016, many didn't know who she was, but she actually became more popular after her 2016 run when mainstream media pundits blamed her for the reason that Hillary Clinton lost instead of blaming Hillary Clinton. Imagine that. So this time around, people know who Jill Stein is coming into the race. So she was on CNN. And I want you to see the difference between the way this commentator talks to someone on the left and the way that Abby Phillips did earlier in the segment with Nina Turner. Here we go.
My next guest has launched an unexpected bid for the White House. Two-time Green Party presidential nominee Jill Stein is seeking the party's nomination in 2024, calling the current political system broken. She joins me for tonight's candidate interview. Jill Stein, thank you so much for being here this evening. We've got a lot to discuss tonight. I'm eager to get your opinion on so many things, but I do want to get your reaction to this Colorado 14th Amendment ruling. The judge saying that Donald Trump, quote, engaged in an insurrection, but will stay on the Colorado ballot. Do you agree with that?
You know, I am not a legal expert, and especially not in this area. This is the third case, as I understand it, to be decided in favor of allowing the voters basically to either accept or reject Donald Trump on the ballot. That sounds reasonable to me. I tend to err on the side of allowing voters to make decisions. But again, you know, this is not my area of expertise at all.
Well, on that point, that was one of the big arguments that was raised. The question essentially came down to whose decision should it be, and should one's behavior foreclose that moment? So we'll see what happens, maybe other places. But now to your bid for the White House, because you've done this twice before, once in 2012, also 2016. You never cracked 2 million votes. You didn't receive a single electoral vote. Why do you think the third time will end up differently?
Well, I think you can ask the voters why it is that they are clamoring for more choices. You know, when you don't have exposure, when you're not covered by the media, when there are all sorts of hoops, expensive hoops that you have to jump through as a grassroots campaign in order to even get on the ballot. There are all kinds of reasons why independents and third parties have a very steep uphill climb. But, you know, the voters are clamoring for more choices. And I would say, you know, who is anybody to tell the voters that they don't deserve choices? This is really fundamental to our democracy, to our rights as voters, and to the integrity of our elections, is to have those choices.
Yeah, and I would say the people that would say that the voters do not have choices or should not have a choice is mainstream media. They're the ones that say that. The pundits on CNN, on MSNBC, and on Fox News, they're the ones that will tell you, look, you either vote for Joe Biden or you get Donald Trump, okay? Like, that's just how it is. So you guys got to make a decision here. Do you want Trump again? Do you want Donald Trump? Is that what you want? I'm not sure the fear mongering will work this time around.
You know, there has been a lot of criticism about a two-party system for that very reason, frankly, and that when somebody who is not a part of either the Democrats or the Republican Party, they get a lot of criticism. They're accused of being a spoiler vote. In fact, you yourself was accused of that as well, accused of having taken away votes from Hillary Clinton in places like Michigan and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, where Trump's victory margin was smaller than your total votes.
Pause here for a second. 2016 presidential election. So in Michigan, you'll see the Trump-Clinton margin was 10,704. Jill Stein had 51,463 votes. The fact that Jill got that many votes as a third-party candidate, that's impressive. Wisconsin, Trump-Clinton margin 22,748. Jill, 31,072. And then we'll see Pennsylvania, Trump Clinton margin 44,292, Jill Stein 49,900, and I think that's 141 there at the end. What's interesting is, once again, Michigan is at play. Joe Biden does need Michigan to win. And he's not doing well there now. Particularly, remember that Michigan has the largest Arab community in the United States, and he's not polling well among the Arab community. So he does need Michigan to win. So if he does not win Michigan, that's it for Joe. But that being said, I would argue that those voters in those states that came out to vote for Jill Stein did not want Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump as president. And that's why they voted for the third party choice. That's typically how it works. They saw both of them as horrible.
When you hear this complaint, based on what you've just said about who has the nerve essentially to tell the American voters who they can and cannot have as choices, do you think the criticism has been fair about your entrance into the races?
I think the criticism reflects a certain kind of arrogance that the establishment parties own your vote. They don't own your vote. They have to earn your vote. And, you know, the studies and the statistics are very clear that people who voted Green, almost 2/3 would not have come out to vote at all had there not been a Green or someone with a Green agenda been on the ballot. So it's completely invalid to suggest that those votes belonged to Hillary Clinton. And I think it reflects a kind of arrogance of the establishment parties to presume that voters owe them their votes. And I think that's part of what people are rebelling against now in clamoring for other choices. It's a record high 63% of voters now who are saying that the two-party system has failed them. And, you know, to look at the reality of people's lives now, there's a lot to that, where you have 60%, over 60% living paycheck to paycheck. 1 in 4 are food insecure. You have 40% of renters who are severely economically stressed. Half of young people are saying that they are hopeless about the future, and in fact that they feel betrayed and abandoned by their government on really critical issues, including the climate collapse, which is accelerating towards us right now. So I think, those are all reflections of the fact that people are really hungry for more choices, and they want a real debate, which only happens when you have challengers on the ballot. Yeah. And I think, if you look at what your mother, sorry, go ahead.
So I just want to add, Jill Stein was able to get on the ballot in over 40 states in 2016. She's probably going to have that happen again because the Greens have the infrastructure to make that happen, and they've done this before. It's not like it's their first time, so that probably will happen. What I was really surprised by with this interview is that this is the first time I've seen an interview with Jill Stein on mainstream media where I felt like they weren't trying to take her down. Like, does that make sense? Like, I was kind of surprised. Number one, they brought her on CNN. But again, that goes to show you they can't ignore these independent and third party candidates this time around. The stakes are too high. Joe Biden is polling horribly. If Joe Biden was polling, if his poll numbers were through the roof, they could probably just ignore the third party independent candidates. Because his numbers are so low and the people that are running do have name recognition, they can't ignore it. So Joe Biden should stop ignoring it as well.
Okay, I was going to ask you, but one of the things you did leave out, which is going to be very top of mind for many voters right now, in addition to everything you just listed, has been the Israel-Hamas war. And a lot of voters right now, particularly leaning in, and you have been an outspoken critic of Israel's ground operation in Gaza. One need only comb through your X account to see that you have been very condemning of the administration and the American response, and also what's going on in Israel. Do you condemn the actions as well of Hamas on October 7th?
I condemn all violence against civilians. Yes, absolutely. At the same time, I think one has to recognize that what we're seeing from the Netanyahu regime now is in a league of its own, and it's really it's horrific to witness. You have over 2 million people who are denied food and water and electricity, who are being bombed relentlessly for the past month. Half of the housing has been destroyed in Gaza. People have had to move, to just pack up and walk to safety, and they're being bombed as they do. You're seeing the targeting of hospitals and healthcare centers and refugee centers and press offices, as well as the press themselves. I mean, it's absolutely horrendous. And we are seeing, Israel now kind of being considered a pariah state. So it's not just that this is terrible for Palestinians, this is also terrible for Israel. And we're seeing countries who have repaired their relations with Israel, including Jordan, one of the few Arab countries who reestablished relations, who have now basically broken them off and recalled their ambassadors.
I mean, and so, this.
So Jill is really good on this issue. I can tell you, Jill did speak at a couple of anti-war rallies this year. She spoke at the Rage Against the War Machine rally. She also spoke at the Answer Coalition Peace in Ukraine rally, which was actually a couple weeks after the Rage Against the War Machine rally. So this is kind of like her wheelhouse. She's really good on this particular issue. So it's just, again, I'm just still shocked that CNN actually brought Jill Stein on for an interview. I think we all remember how they tried to ignore her in 2016.
This is part of
the take. Go ahead.
Part of the reason I'd love to have you back on and talk about what you would do, since you're asking to be the president of the United States, what you would do differently to try to stop what is happening. Dr. Jill Stein, we'll have to have that conversation another day. Thank you so much.
So I wanted you to hear that part too, because it appears they want to bring her back on. So guys, the tide is turning. And I want to remind you of something that Jill Stein went through, because she is one of the ones that did try to fight to have her voice heard. And she was arrested. And I don't know if everybody remembers this, but Democracy Now! Captured this. This was actually 11 years ago. It said Green Party's Jill Stein and Sherry Hunkala arrested attempting to enter Hofstra debate. So this is when they wouldn't let her debate.
Slide over here. Just slide over is what we need to do. Come on over. Just for a minute. You can stand here. Just slide over. Slide over. Slide over here. Ma'am, please.
Well, we're here to stand our ground. We're here to stand ground for the American people who have been systematically locked out of these debates for decades by the Commission on Presidential Debates. We think that this commission is entirely illegitimate, that if democracy truly prevailed, there would be no such commission, that the debates would still be run by the League of Women Voters, that the debates would be open with the criteria that the League of Women Voters had always used, which was...
Can I just ask a question really quick? I have to find this out from someone. I wonder what happened to the League of Women Voters. What happened to that organization? Because that's what Jill Stein was saying there. If they were still managing the debates, this wouldn't be happening. So I want to find that out. I think I'm going to do a little bit of digging to find out what happened to them.
That if you have done the work to get on the ballot, if you are on the ballot and could actually win the Electoral College by being on the ballot in enough states, that you deserve to be in the election and you deserve to be heard, and that the American people actually deserve to hear choices which are not bought and paid for by multinational corporations and Wall Street.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are obstructing the vehicle of pedestrians and traffic. If you refuse to move, you are subject to arrest. Remove them, bring them back to the rescue.
Come on, man. Step up, please. Stand up. We'll help you. Come on. Thank you, man.
Thank you, ladies.
Watch the flag. Please.
Thank you, ladies.
Who's spotted us? Thank you.
Come with us.
Just come with us.
Thank you, man.
Okay, you guys got to stay here. All right, everybody, we're going to ask you to please.
Yeah, so that was when Jill Stein was arrested for just trying to debate. That was just absolutely ridiculous. But I want to take you back to a time where she also explained why it's important for third parties to get that 5%. So shout out to Neoliberal Tears here, who's been doing the damn thing on Twitter. Similar to Case Study QB, Neoliberal Tears has been clipping a lot of things, some old, some new. Says Dr. Stein on the tangible benefits of third parties getting 5% of the vote. Everyone listen to this. This is important.
If we hit 5%, that is a breakthrough, because at 5% we become a nationally recognized party. We immediately have $10 million out of the starting gate in the next presidential election, and it means we have automatic ballot access on most states. So that means that Americans actually are guaranteed that you have a choice. So make your vote count. You know, don't throw your vote away on more of a political system that has thrown you under the bus. You can actually invest your vote in this race in a real movement for change. And that.
Let's pause here. Everybody heard what she said? If you get that 5% as a third party, then you get the federal funding. If you get 15%, then you're on the debate stage, right? That's why I told you, I said RFK Jr., if he keeps up those numbers, he's going to be on the debate stage. One of the things they show you here at this point in time, Trump was at 41%. Hillary Clinton was at 33%. This is among independents. Gary Johnson was at 11% and Jill Stein was at 3%. Gary Johnson, by the way, was a historic race for the Libertarian Party. A lot of people, I'm surprised more people don't cover this, but I talked about this before, that Gary Johnson, that race in particular, was historical for the Libertarian Party. The amount of support that he was able to get. And remember, they're on like all 50 states, the Libertarian Party is, right?
That is transformative. Coming out of this race, we're going to be focusing on two things in particular that have really bothered the American people. Number one is that Americans deserve to know who they can vote for. We need a debate commission that's not controlled by the Democratic and Republican parties. So we're going to be creating a campaign to throw out this biased two-party commission on presidential debates that silences political opposition at a time that the American people are hungering for it. We're going to create a real People's Commission for the presidential debate.
Well, you say a lot of the polls undercount millennials and different groups, but also, you know, the support for independent candidates, and I'm independent politically myself, but the support for independent candidates tends to shrink closer and closer to the election. There is still this idea that you're wasting your vote by voting for another party. I don't know what the answer is to that, but it's very prevalent.
Well, and let me say there is specifically an answer. It's called ranked choice voting. And what it does is it lets you go into the voting booth and rank your choices. So you can vote for an independent or a third-party candidate, knowing that if that candidate loses, your vote is automatically reassigned to your second choice. So then there's no fear voting. There's no voting based on some calculation that you don't want your vote thrown away. This guarantees that you can bring your values into our vote, which is what Americans are desperate for. Because just, you know, an election that's dictated by who do you hate the most and who do you fear the most, that's not a democracy. Democracy needs a moral compass. It needs our values. We've got to be able to bring our values to the voting system.
Shout out to Neoliberal Tears for that clip, just as a reminder for you guys. But one thing she mentioned was ranked choice voting. And I do just want to bring this up for probably the millionth time on this show. Ranked choice voting would be a game changer because, like she said, this idea of throwing your vote away wouldn't even be a talking point if every state had ranked choice voting, because then it would just get deferred to your second choice. So Maine has ranked choice voting. And if I remember correctly, I believe there's one district in Nebraska that has ranked choice voting. Nevada, actually, I believe just got ranked choice voting this year, if I'm not mistaken. So maybe this will spread across the country. Hopefully it can. I know it didn't pass in Massachusetts, and I think that's because the way that it was worded. But ranked choice voting would be a game changer. But wait for it, folks. If you notice, mainstream media is not avoiding these third party and independent candidates anymore. Going to go to some of the super chats here. Thank you, Janice. Honestly, with all the policies intended to keep Black communities in poverty, should some form of reparations for, there should be some form of reparations for that as well. Not as much money. Thank you, Darnell. Don't vote for any third party candidate that takes money from corporate lobbies. Emoji says Jill mentioned that she's getting more press attention than she ever did before. You guys see? Marco, Jill got arrested at the debates and at the Dakota Access Pipeline. Thank you, Stop Sniffing Kids Joe. Biden is cheating with the, well, I'll leave that there. I can't say that on here. You know how YouTube is. But thank you so much for that. Shout out to Colin Palmquist for becoming a Sabby member. Let's give Colin a big whoop, whoop. Whoop, whoop. Marco says the Commission for Presidential Debates funded by two parties replaced the League of Women Voters in 1987. Okay. I might need to do a show about that. I need to go back. I need to read up on this. Go back through some of the history of the League of Women Voters. That's interesting. Mary says the League of Women Voters is still active. Each state has a chapter. It's run by old ladies now. Nothing new with them. Interesting.